Hi there. Greetings from Morning Talk Online. We are on the 26th Sunday in Ordinary Time, and today we have a very powerful gospel taken from Luke chapter 16, verses 19 to 31. It is about the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. There are two contrasting characters in the story. One, of course, a rich man who dressed in purple cloth and fine linen and loved feasting. And the other, a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who desired to be merely fed with scraps from the rich man's table and had as his companions dogs who would lick his sores. Here, the gospel makes no mention of any wrongdoing or good things done by any of the two. Just that the rich man enjoyed his riches, while Lazarus was so miserably poor. But the real story begins here. The decisive turning point of the account comes with the death of both Lazarus and the rich man. There is, all of a sudden, a sharp reversal in position. The poor man died and was carried away by angels to the bosom of Abraham. He is taken out of isolation and misery into fullness of life. The rich man also died and was buried, and from the netherworld, where he was in torment, he raised his eyes and saw Abraham far off and Lazarus at his side. He was taken out of his society and was transferred to a limitless loneliness. And I quote the words of Abraham. A great chasm is established to prevent anyone from crossing who might wish to go from our side to yours, or from your side to ours. Thereafter, as the story continues, the rich man pleads his case with Abraham. And as if to say all is too late, Abraham replies, "My child, remember that you received what was good in your lifetime, while Lazarus received what was bad. But now he is comforted here, whereas you are tormented." Through all these, what might have gone wrong or right to determine the fate of the two in the afterlife? What might the rich man have been called to do to prevent his downfall? And what about us listeners? What might the Lord be asking us to be mindful of? I think that the parable tells us that what we do with our lives now is done before God, and as such has its eternal implications. The emphasis is on the present, on life, not what happens after death, because our life lived for God or resisting God will determine what happens in the hereafter. The parable speaks of God's justice and concern for the poor. It's worth mentioning that this is the only parable where a name is given to a character in the parable of Jesus. Perhaps to emphasize that the poor man is not just anyone. God knows him by name and is sensitive to his needs. The text underlines the disturbing contrast between extreme wealth and extreme poverty, in which the rich man couldn't care less about entering into communion with the poor. There is no mention about exploitation or doubts about how he accumulated his wealth, but rather a total lack of concern with which the rich man enjoys his wealth, unaware of any impending doom that awaits him. One is not guilty only when one commits evil, but also when one does not act, when one does not do anything, like sharing if one has too much. On the brighter side, the parable offers an opportunity for the rich to share their wealth with the poor, who will be their friend at the moment that money will no longer mean anything when they leave this world. The parable urges us to open our hearts with mercy and compassion. There is nothing wrong with wealth. The story of the rich man truly describes the way things are. It represents human reality and the disparity that exists between the rich and the poor. The story of the rich man and Lazarus truly describes the way things are. It represents human reality and the disparity that exists between the rich and the poor. The rich man represents upper-class affluence, and Lazarus dramatizes the poverty of the masses. The parable emphasizes the seriousness of the present and calls us to a real sense of responsibility for the poor and the oppressed, and all this in reference to God's judgment and criteria. Lazarus need not lie at the gate of the rich man. Each one of us has a Lazarus at our door, needing us to share our wealth in whatever form it may be. It is up to us to invite him to sit at our table. Lazarus needs us, but we also need Lazarus to help us discover the good that is innate in each one of us as God's children. In Lazarus, we might discover how poor we also are and meet our Lord, who is present in every one of us. It is a parable about the good we fail to do, which are also called sins of omission. So often, we examine our conscience and think, I didn't kill, I didn't steal, I didn't slander, so on and so forth. I can't think of any wrong I've done. But what about the good we failed to do? Is our following of Christ focused only on avoiding sin? Or is it shaped by our doing good? How do we deal with the Lazaruses who come to our door or wish for us to come to theirs? The parable tells us that Lazarus was poor, but there are all kinds of poverties in our time. Poverty of body, poverty of spirit, or poverty of the soul. All of a sudden, I am reminded of the good things I may have put off doing. Visiting a family member or friend that I could cheer up or haven't seen for a long time, especially those who haven't been well in some way. Or a friend who has needed someone to listen. Do find the time. Tomorrow may be too late. Before ending, let me leave you with questions to ponder on. Is your identity as a Christian defined by the evil you are avoiding or by the good you are doing? Do you even notice the good you failed to do? The rich man in the parable was judged not by what he did, but on that which he failed to do. Not by the people who admired his wealth, but by the poor he refused to love. He lost forever his chance to do good. But, like his brothers in the parable, we still have our chance. In concluding, our very own Saint Marie Eugenie reminds us, to whom much is given, much is required. How have we used our graces and blessings to make of this world a place of God's glory, where Lazarus never need lie outside gates. Have a pleasant morning, basking in God's love.